Welcome, you're watching Notepad. I'm your host Ibrahim Sani. The Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin has appealed for cross-party support when Parliament votes on the budget proposals. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz in response has said that it would be more of an expansionary budget than this year's 297 billion ringgit budget. So we've seen these two, complementary views. One is talking about trying to find a conciliatory approach. Another one is talking about a budget that is far bigger than last year or this year. Next year's budget is going to be bigger than this year's budget. How does these two ideas mash together when the budget is going to be presented in just a few days from now? But having already rolled out stimulus packages worth 305 billion ringgit as the coronavirus ruined the economy, we would like to question how much more can the government afford to spend for next year. So because of this, the Parliament in August has approved a 5% hike in government's self-imposed debt ceiling to 60% of GDP, but economists see little, if any, leeway left for more borrowing. So if you can't tax more and you can't borrow more, how does this all figure out? So we've seen this whole idea of how all this is going to make this budget presentation a little bit more complicated than earlier thought. Joining us in this conversation to try to understand a little bit more about how the government is going to untangle this particular problem that they're going to face is Tai Lai Kok, Head of Tax at KPMG Malaysia. Mr. Tai, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us. Let's try to understand a little bit better about some of the thematic ideas that the government might have for this budget, largely because the government has narrowed the budget's focus to three key themes that we've seen before this, which is public welfare, business continuity and economic resilience. But what do you think is the relevance of this year's budget themes compared to the current situation that we're going through right now?
Thanks, Ibrahim. I feel that the themes that have been announced by the government are extremely relevant. Obviously, the people comes very, very highly in the agenda insofar as the budget is concerned. It is quite clear that a lot of the rakyat is suffering throughout this particular pandemic. There will be many of us who have lost our jobs, have been forced to take reductions in salaries, and extremely uncertain insofar as what tomorrow brings. So I think it is absolutely important that the government focuses insofar as the area of the sustainability of people's well-being, okay, and absolutely critical there. But at the same time, also looking at ways in which businesses can recover. The country cannot suffer much further, quite clearly. I mean, if we were to look into public areas, you see the lack of business, the lack of activity insofar as the business sector is concerned. That is another key area which the government definitely needs to focus on. Of course, the suggestion also of enhancing the public service delivery. We have got, sadly sad to say, very limited funds available. I mean, you did mention just now the significant amount of stimulus that the government has already provided to the nation, okay, these few months. And now we're talking about, again, another budget that will have to be put in place, additional funds to be made available. So enhancing the public service delivery, making sure that they are minimal, wastages insofar as the cost of providing public services are concerned is also absolutely critical. So I think quite a well-themed budget. We do have to see, obviously, what the details of the budget provides for this coming Friday.
The understanding is that because of taking into account the shrinkage of the economy from 3.5% to 5.5%, the economic contraction forecast for this year, the government expects the 2020 fiscal deficit to hit around 5.8% to 6.0% of GDP. A note that has been published by Standard Chartered says that with a potential nominal growth contraction of 5% in this year and a fiscal deficit of 6%, then the debt to GDP ratio may have already reached close to 60%, which is 59.6%. If economic growth rebounds to around 8% in 2021, the government may have to reduce its fiscal deficit to 5% of GDP or come up with alternative financing like borrowing from abroad. How do you think this is going to complicate matters even further?
I think that's a million-dollar question, Ibrahim. I have read the same articles, and the numbers are quite worrying. Obviously, the mandated government debt to GDP of 60% now seems to be very clearly going to be breached. Suggestion is that they may have to come again and increase that particular rate to 65%, perhaps, to cater for 2021 expenditures. That aside, I mean, that's very macro, and government really has to figure out what it is that it's going to do to manage its books. The deficits are clear, as you mentioned just now. It will very much have to be a situation whereby the government will have to look for ways and means in which to generate additional revenues, notwithstanding the difficulties that most businesses will be encountering this year and next year, I'm sure. So it will have to be two-pronged, I'm sure. Ways and means in which to raise capital to the extent that is allowed and permitted by Parliament, as well as increasing the amount of revenues that are available through taxes that perhaps has not been raised properly in the past or has been overlooked in the past. I think that probably will be one way of looking at it. The amount that can be derived from picking up on the overlooked taxes, if you like, may not be significant, but I think at the end of the day, every dollar does count. As a tax professional, I see GST as being a much more efficient system, okay, than the sales tax and the service tax. Okay, so to me, it does make a lot of sense that we do have a GST. In fact, I guess 100+ countries in the world really, I guess, cannot be too wrong insofar as all of them having implemented GST. The question will be, can we implement it and can we administer it well and better than what we did in the past? I think there were various weaknesses insofar as the GST regime, we call it GST 1.0 if we want, insofar as the monitoring mechanism, insofar as the refund mechanism, and all these weaknesses, I think ultimately led to its downfall. So if GST were to come back and it comes back as a better version, okay, given the experiences we had in the past, I think it should certainly be superior to the old system of sales tax and service tax. It certainly enables the government to collect taxes from all consumers, from all users. Obviously, we can find ways and means in which to support the lower income group when it comes to the implementation of GST once again. So, and I guess that's the other area that needs to be thought about. How do we make sure that the government support insofar as the lower income group in a GST environment is done and is done well? So yeah, as a professional, I think it is a tax that makes a lot of sense. And if we appreciate how it works, then it certainly is something that the government should be really thinking about again.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think one of the biggest issues insofar as the GST era is concerned is education and uncertainty. Okay, sad to say, the knowledge and the experience of the authority, okay, at various levels are uneven. Okay, you do have obviously the very senior people within customs who administer GST who are extremely proficient insofar as the law is concerned and the workings of the law. But I have experienced the lower levels perhaps not being as well informed and trained. Okay, we do have situations whereby certain positions or certain determinations by different parts of customs can be different insofar as the issue is concerned. So that's one area that really needs to be looked into to make sure that everybody is appropriately trained, appropriately educated to be able to provide support to the rakyat. Another thing that perhaps is again a very important thing to take care of also would be refunds. In a typical GST era, you do have situations whereby taxpayers are due refunds when they submit their GST returns. In cases whereby the GSTs that they pay on their purchases actually exceeds the GST that is liable to be paid to customs. So a net refund is due to them. This particular refund process, unfortunately, in GST 1.0 has been extremely lengthy. It takes way too much time. It actually eats into the ability for businesses to be able to grow and utilize their cash flow. And that's one area that seriously needs to be improved upon. The point that customs tends to make is that we need to audit. We need to make sure that the amount that you are claiming back is the right amount before I give you back your money. But customs has an audit program for GST, and the law provides for a refund of the GST overpayments, and these should be done in accordance with the law. Audit the firms, audit the companies, audit the businesses if you need after the refund has been given to make sure that what they are claiming is correct, and penalize them if necessary if they are overclaiming or claiming wrongly. But holding back GST refunds in situations whereby businesses need cash flow is a serious issue. And I think that part of it also needs to be rectified, and to make sure that businesses have full confidence insofar as the GST system and administration is concerned.
What about taxing the shadow economy?
Yeah. I think insofar as the shadow economy is concerned, I think this is the other thing that I was trying to allude to, insofar as overlooked sectors. I suppose the term I use, overlooked sectors, not really correct. Okay, it is there, and I think the authorities are aware that there is this called shadow economy. I mean, the previous finance minister had also been talking about this so-called shadow economy, whereby quite a number of these, participants in this particular economy pay little or no taxes at all. So this is an area that definitely needs to be focused on, and additional resources, if necessary, should be targeted towards looking at how we can derive the necessary revenues and the required revenues from this particular sector. The suggestion of possibly bringing in billions of ringgit as a result of taxing this particular sector of the economy can be quite rewarding, I'm sure, if the right efforts and the right resources are directed towards it.
What about the introduction of a windfall tax? Is this possible?
Okay, I think that it is not unheard of, a windfall tax. I think many years ago we did have a similar windfall tax insofar as the oil palm industry is concerned. So this is not totally out of the expectations or the norm. And given the fact that the reported earnings of the glove manufacturers are, an all-time high, the government could honestly be looking at that particular avenue. Again, I guess the point would be every little bit counts, and notwithstanding the fact that there are a handful of such manufacturers in Malaysia who are generating these gains that effectively are related to the pandemic. Perhaps it is fair to suggest that some of these manufacturers should contribute back to the country, okay, as opposed to a situation whereby they get to enjoy fully the gains of that they derive in 2020, 2021. So not something that you can totally discount. In fact, I think reading the articles and suggestions, there are plenty of people who are thinking that this may be something that may happen.
Okay, we'll take a short break before we continue our conversation with the head of tax at KPMG. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. We're talking about the budget. Joining us is Mr. Tai of KPMG, is the head of tax there. Let's continue our conversation on how can the government respond to the current need of businesses right now and to stimulate the economy. Do you feel that some knock-on effects or knock-on economy would be needed more, particularly when we talk about the SME sector and the construction sector? Do you think that this kind of areas would be some of the key focus that the government will have to think about for this particular budget?
Okay, thanks for the question. I think certainly this needs to be one of the key measures that the government must take. I think earlier on we talked about the fact that apart from helping the rakyat itself, a key move and a key strategy would be to look into ways in which to recover from the pandemic insofar as the businesses are concerned. So certainly this is something that needs to be done. Real question obviously is how are they going to do it? There will be various things that can be done from a tax point of view, obviously. One would be to look at the ways and means to help businesses minimize the amount of taxes that they need to pay, okay, during this particular limited time. Okay? One of the things that comes to mind, obviously, is the fact that a good number of these businesses will, or more likely than not, will have losses. Okay, and not too long ago, we actually clamped down and reduced the effectiveness, if you like, of the group relief provisions that are available, which allows losses from one company in a group to be used by profits or used against the profits of another company in the group. So that reduction in flexibility caused most of the groups to not be able to utilize group relief anymore. Perhaps it should be time to relook into that and reintroduce group relief as per what it was in the past, to allow businesses to utilize losses that some of the entities are suffering against profits of other entities. Now, the other thing obviously would be to think about whether or not there should be additional measures to assist the rakyat from a tax angle. And I think there are plenty of us who have spent quite a bit of money and resources insofar as preparing ourselves during this pandemic, whether it is situations whereby we incur costs to buy face masks, sanitizers, and even situations whereby we have to upgrade our home environment to be able to work from home. I believe a good number of Malaysians are actually working from home now during these few months. So the government should be looking at ways and means perhaps in which to reduce the burden on these taxpayers who've had to incur these additional costs, which in the past they would have not had to. So additional reliefs, perhaps insofar as these costs for purchasing personal protective equipment, telecommunication equipment, I think this should be really relooked at as well. So those are some of the things that perhaps are looking towards aiding businesses and taxpayers. Now, the other thing also will be, how do we boost demand? How do we boost the economy itself? And given the fact that if it is a situation whereby there is going to be limited growth within domestically, should we be looking at ways and means to improve the FDIs into the country, improve foreign funds into the country, improve the level of foreign funds into the country? Obviously, the government had announced the measures for global unicorns last year, okay, in a bid to attract the very large multinationals to come in. The result of that obviously is not very well known, but I think even more can be done to attract these global unicorns and really even regional ones. Incentives are obviously the most relevant and obvious way to go about it, to give these investors a good amount of incentives to entice them to come in here. After all, if you look at it insofar as Malaysia is concerned, we are in fact one of the most attractive countries in the top economies insofar as cost of doing business is concerned. we recently conducted a survey and found that Malaysia effectively ranks fourth amongst the top 17 economies in the world insofar as ease of doing business is concerned. So this is something really we need to capitalize on. And given our very, very robust incentive regime, I think there's no reason why we can't do a great job insofar as bringing in investors. The only thing is, of course, how are we going to do it and how are we going to do it well? I think to a certain extent, we are a little bit slow in coming out with definitive policies and guidelines that accompany this incentives announcements. And therefore, a lot of investors basically sit waiting and say, look, Malaysia has announced this, looks fantastic. Can we find out more? Guidelines are not ready yet. So I think we need to improve a little bit insofar as our delivery process is concerned. We need to be ready with full information and guidelines when we are ready to announce anything that is new and any attractions. Investors never like to be uncertain. Okay, never in their life will they invest in anything where there is a significant amount of uncertainty insofar as qualification, insofar as the environment. So I think we can do a little bit more, I suppose, insofar as attracting foreign dollars into the country to help boost our recovery process.
And of course, an important component to boost our country's revenues, of course, the FDIs, or foreign direct investments. Do you believe that more can be done for the government trying to court more investors coming in and invest into our country? What are your views on this?
Yes, I think over the years, I have observed that we certainly have improved by leaps and bounds insofar as the background stuff that we do insofar as attracting foreign direct investments. The agencies, the MIDA and whatnot, with their relevant arms and legs all around the world, are particularly active nowadays insofar as trying to persuade foreign investors to relocate or locate part of the operations in Malaysia. So I think that's fantastic. But then, of course, we also want to compare ourselves to other countries and on what it is that they are doing as well. Singapore has the EDB, obviously, which are extremely active insofar as engaging foreign multinationals. We need to be as aggressive as they are insofar as this particular area is concerned. We have so many more comparative advantages compared to all our other competitors, if you like. You know, our cost of labor is still relatively cheap. Our real estate cost is amongst the lowest in the region, if not the lowest. And our income tax rates are extremely competitive, and with the incentives in place as well, we are an extremely attractive location insofar as investments go. But I believe that we have not made ourselves heard enough. We are this, how we call it, we are like this person who says, look, I know I'm good, okay, but I don't need to tell the whole world about it. I don't need to tell the whole world I'm great. Maybe we should start doing that a little bit more, make sure that we are known, we are seen, we are heard, and active engagement. I think much more active engagement needs to be done in order to attract the FDIs. Our FDIs numbers have not been going up the roof. In fact, I believe looking at some comparisons a year or so ago, we have been falling behind. I think the likes of Vietnam, and that is something that we are extremely concerned about. I think we need to really see how it is that we can pull investments back into Malaysia as much as possible, and very quickly too.
Right, thanks. That was a fantastic conversation. That was Tai Lai Kok, the head of tax at KPMG in Malaysia. If you missed any part of this show, just head on to astro.awani.com, look for Notepad over there. Plenty of interviews like this can be found there. You can also watch these kind of interviews on your mobile devices. Just download the Astro Awani app wherever you get the application. And also remember that this is your budget channel. Stay tuned to Astro Awani throughout this week to ensure that you get the latest updates and the latest news, particularly when it comes to the budget presentation that's going to happen at the end of this week. But for now, that's all that we have for this show. Thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.